Okay, as we make our way into 1759, in the spring, I'm going to explain what happened in the diplomacy. Not a lot. Pretty much as I said, the Spanish question couldn't be resolved by anyone. The only thing that really happened was the Russians and the Dutch came to that accord, and the Dutch paid the Russians $6 for 2 men. Basically, Russian manpower is valueless to them. They have so much of it. And the only question was, what are people willing to pay for it? And in particular, what are the Dutch willing to pay for it? Because everyone else would kind of align them somewhere they didn't want to be. But the Dutch have largely been out of anything except attacking the Spaniards, which seems sort of like a cooperative thing with the rest of the world. A bunch of cards got played to affect money and manpower. Some new leaders. Turkey got a new leader. Prussia got a new leader. We're running out of leaders at this point. And, well, I guess we're ready to start with the spring. Maybe not me, because I'm kind of tired and cranky. And 1, 2, 4 more years to go. I was kind of hoping to finish this over the weekend, but I just do not have the devotion to this game to play very much of it at once. Okay, so took care of the builds, and a lot of decent amount of infantry were being built this turn, mainly Russians. Other people, though, are involved. French have a couple. Also some replacement of units. Russia really, and for that matter Holland in their own way, although they didn't even use all the manpower they had, but they need this reserve to be able to make these low odds attacks with any reasonable chances, as well as continuing their war here against the Spaniards. So I think both gained from it, but my feeling is the Russians came out a little ahead. And that makes sense because they're already ahead in points, so anything that they can get is helpful. However, nobody's really close, as I've said, to the victory point limits. English still unable to build their colonials. Spaniards laying down a new fleet to replace the one they lost. And we got our order of play. The Russians wanted to go before the Turks, and they managed that. And let's see, I think the Prussians wanted to go before the Austrians. That's why they're early, not just a bad die roll there. Alright. Okay, well, so far we had the Russians come in and take Rumelia, and they paid for an extra round of attack there on the fortifications. The Turks pulled away. They want to gather their forces together. Similarly, the Austrians lost Bohemia to the Prussians. Very much the same way. They pulled away. They don't have that kind of huge army. In fact, when you count up everything they have, that Prussian army with all its leaders is quite potent. So the Austrians are looking at the possibility maybe of trying to take out Prussia without having to face that army, at least at first. They don't, I think, even have a good card for this. Yeah, they don't have a good card to handle it. So, well. Okay, so the Spanish went and took New England. They also had their fleet defeated out in the Caribbean and forced back into port. They moved into what is this, Galicia, and you know, to help try and prevent the Dutch from being able to attack. See how that works out. I don't, you know, they're in so much trouble with these French armies anyhow that I don't know how much good it's going to do. Spain regained, you know, some of its points, but their home country is falling, and that's very, very bad. On the other hand, we have the Austrians, who pulled forces back into Vienna, trying to defend something, and also marched in and took Berlin. This is sort of a spiral of doom, but I think Prussia loses it if there's less Prussian home territories. So if they can kind of trade off on each other and then come to the big battle, Austria can replenish their losses. Prussia's going to have a hard time, maybe coming just out of East Prussia, for example, or East Prussia and Mecklenburg, when the main front's down in the south. So I think Schwerin is going to have to cope with the Austrian problem as it stands. Okay, the English have finished. Let's look at what happened. The Dutch went to siege Sumatra again and failed. They didn't get a loss there this time. They drove the Spaniards out of Galicia, but didn't succeed with the siege. And they got their navy in the land battle. The Spaniards then got further driven back out of Madrid, where the French managed to get to 2-point siege in. There's very little Spanish force here. If we look over on the other map now, the French have marched into New Granada and put that under siege. The English Navy is split up, some of it transporting troops into Florida, which they immediately took, and now they can march their way up and start getting some of that manpower back that they really, really badly need. Whether or not this is a match for the Spanish army up here, well, that Spanish army isn't very potent. Of course, if it's got the defensive bonus of the forts, it probably could stymie things a bit. The rest of the English Navy moved into the Eastern Atlantic, and you'll notice there's a big French force now in the Ile-de-France, and Cumberland's moved down to Hesse. It's sort of a, well, the Spanish War looks like it's coming to an end, and there's no truce anymore, so they're now back at it. That's going to put us back into the summer. Well, troops are down, and the player order's been determined for the summer turn of 59. You'll see the French jumped into moving first. They want to try to get their fleet by Hawk. It seems worth it because if they can't get cash, that's only really available in the Caribbean for them, they're going to have trouble maintaining this war. Yes, they're making impressive gains down here in Spain, but it doesn't really matter when they go there. The other thing is, well, they can't really get anyone. They have a couple of leaders, but they don't have a card to give them more. So they're kind of in a position where they're going to have to take a risk here, and maybe their navy is not that important if they lose it. In the sense that the British are, if the British are going to have command of the sea anyway, it doesn't really make much difference if the French navy is in existence or not, because then the British can just concentrate on other things like the Dutch. But for the French, it doesn't make much difference. Other than that, well, countries like Turkey are probably doomed. The other big guess was Austria and Prussia. Austria wanted to go after Prussia. This may seem a little weird because the Prussians can march down and maybe take Vienna if they're lucky. They still have money. They're just low on manpower, so they can actually do some significant attacks. On the other hand, maybe they want to go back and take Berlin and face part of the Austrian army. Well, either way, it's part of the Austrian army. Anyway, get started with the French, I guess. Well, the French, and I think I missed one attack. Yeah, maybe not. Okay, the French continued their siege of New Granada. No, I couldn't have, and got 1 point against it. They took Madrid, and they actually went and took Swabia, putting them in position to face Cumberland here. I don't know if they could have reached. Yeah, they could. Okay. They're now at 5 victory points, which it isn't a lot. I mean, they need 20 to win. There's no question there. But they are kind of looking a little scarier than they were before. Of course, the Austrians are also kind of scary. The Prussians marched down into Vienna. The Austrian army withdrew into the Tyrol, where it's got a heavy, heavy defensive bonus. And the Prussians failed to take... Oh, I cheated. They failed to take... they took Schwerin off. I don't think there are leader losses in sieges. They failed to take Vienna. And that's an interesting situation. No matter what, it was an interesting situation, them choosing to go here. The problem was their entire army was weaker than the defending Austrian-Polish army up here and other allies. So now they're in a position where they have nowhere to retreat to if they're attacked. And that's the real problem. Their hope is to move up to Silesia and take it. But that's not going to happen. And I think they were just foolish in their attack to begin with. It may be an almost to the death battle in Vienna at this point because they have nowhere they can go. Austrians can slide all the way down. See, the Austrians without leaders wouldn't have been able to do this. And they can put all their armies into place. So it was a bad risk, I think. And I think they're going to pay the price for it. On to other countries. Russia, England, and then Austria. Well, the Brits marched up and took Virginia and sent Hawke back into the Caribbean looking for those French. Right now they're out in the central Atlantic where they can't really be caught. He's just wants to be somewhere valuable. Now, let's see, there's no more Prussian army. The Prussians tried to do the best they could. They played a burned bridges card, which actually gave them the numerical advantage, but the Austrians had already paid $4. You see the effect of that. And decided, you know, it's close enough. They had like 17 dice to, I think, 20 for the Prussians. Maybe even more than that. That they rolled for it. And here's the problem. The Prussians actually, because of their leaders, if they suffered badly, and actually the Austrians rolled fairly well, but the Austrians were looking at this as kind of an attrition situation where the Prussian troops take one hit, they go away, they're gone. Whereas the Austrians take hits and their units can withdraw. Although they took losses on some of them actually. Which we see here with Saxons and Bavarians and Poles all damaged. Well, I think the Saxons already were. But they were able to outlast the Prussian army. They were able to kill 2 leaders, Schwerin and I think Henry. And they captured the rest. Well, Prussia pretty much has ceased to exist at this point. The Austrians have a free hand. I don't think France is going to maintain their alliance with Austria, but Austria is a pretty potent power. And at this point, things like Turkey and Russia have to start considering, can we come to peace terms? Right now, Russia's sitting in Macedonia. They pretty much have Turkey under control, but can they really face the Austrians unleashed the way they are? Or is this an emergency situation? They've got to think real carefully about that. Right now they may have their hands full, though, until the diplomacy stage. Anyway, that's it for Austria, and we got 3 more countries left. Not much to see from those other countries. Turkey, well, they have no money, so there's nothing they can really do except hope to deflect the Russians, or hope the Russians turn against someone else. If they can get some kind of peace, say Russia agrees to give this back in exchange for, I don't know, joining in the anti-Austrian coalition or whatever, I think Turkey would be glad to make that deal. Right now they're in trouble. There's Swedes coming down to help the Russians. I don't know if I mentioned that, but they joined. And they have a penalty with Russia, but that was negated by the Russian Navy up here, intimidating them. What else? The Dutch finally took Galicia. The Spaniards didn't do much. They moved into place in New York, and they're negotiating with the French as well as to, okay, look, what does it take? You know, can we come to some sort of agreement? Can I get Madrid back, for example? In exchange for what? What kind of deals could we make here? Can we ally and maybe try to defeat the British Navy together? Because Spain right now is actually at negative points. The Dutch, however, because of their capture of Galicia, are up to 2. And what, they only need 10, right? Yeah. They're one of the countries that only needs 10 points, as is Russia, which is at 5. And Russia's kind of scary there. So Russia may actually want to say, I can race faster than Austria and try to stay under their radar and fight the Turks and let Britain, France, the Dutch, whoever wants to, try to stop the Austrians at this point. All right. Well, we're going to move into the fall, and I'm going to wrap this one and send it up to you.